So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic, specifically the foundations of metaverses, which are increasingly popular in the press today that we're seeing, but also, in business and research and teaching as well. So all important there. And I'm really going to highlight not only like what we have found in the past already, but I also want to point you towards some current research opportunities. So, as students in this area, this is a great space to be in. So I want to make sure to highlight some of those possible opportunities to look at a little bit more. So that's kind of my plan. And I thought it would be fun if we started with a little bit of a poll. So actually, I'm going to come out of here. I don't know if you guys know how to use Slido, but there's a link here, or you can do the QR code. Either way is fine.
Wow.
And we'll go over here and see if we can have you weigh in. Have you visited or used a metaverse before? So if you go to that link in the chat, or if you do the QR code, then you can say yes or no, and we can kind of pull the room and see how experienced you are with the metaverse or not.
Wow. I do, yes.
And there are lots of different metaverses to join, right? So just any of them would be good to see. So a little over half weighing in right now, leaning towards pretty even, but really leaning towards no, it looks like. Well, that looks pretty good. We're about 30 people have weighed in, 31. Looks like we're almost 60% have not been to the metaverse, but 40% have. So those are great. Those are great numbers to see. Okay, we'll come back over here. I'm going to do some more of those in a little bit, so stay ready. If you have been to the metaverse, so that for those of you who have, what was the purpose of doing that? So this is another one. We'll have you weigh in here. What was the purpose of your metaverse experience? Was it like for fun, a game? Was it school related? Any of those? And you can, it's the same QR code, same link. You can weigh in the same place. Yeah, so far it's looking like work, virtual conference, just this kind of check it out. It's getting a lot of attention, want to know what everybody's talking about. Yeah, interviews, convention, for fun, virtual tours. Virtual tours are actually pretty popular. There's lots of groups kind of setting up replicas so you can get comfortable online before you actually have to go somewhere in person. So that's another kind of good one. Yeah, just to kind of check out how it was designed for fun, for class, for games. Those are all pretty common purposes. And that's something I'm going to come back to a little bit later, is how we're kind of classifying the different virtual worlds and metaverses that we have. So we can see like what the groupings might be. Yeah, so good answers in here. So work and fun, a little bit of a balance. Just curious. Yeah, what do people do in a metaverse, right? So trying to figure out what's going on.
It's a new experience.
Yeah, good.
Can you read 나는 철모입니다?
No, there's a couple I can't read.
There's a Korean character.
Yeah. I figured. Okay, good. Looks good. So we'll stop that one too. Okay, so now that we kind of know like who's here and what your experiences have been, I'm going to do the background foundations of metaverses, then we'll talk about some research, and then we'll go into the opportunities. And then at the end, I'm hoping to have some discussion and questions if you guys want to do that too. So we'll start with the foundations. What is a metaverse? So not everybody here has had that experience, but basically a metaverse is a place where you are combining physical and digital worlds and kind of bringing those together. People are actually represented through avatars. So it's not like this. It's not like a Zoom conference where you just see the heads of people. You actually see full body avatars, right? And so those people are able to come in as avatars and interact in the full body experience, which is much different than what we're doing in Zoom. Work and play both, right? So we kind of saw some of those coming up in that poll that we just did. So a lot of it's happening for work. Maybe you can come in and interact in a full body experience and work on something together, or collaborate in a metaverse in that way. But also play is a big part of what's happening in a metaverse. So gaming and spending money, having experiences. There's travel happening in metaverses, concerts happening in metaverses, trying on clothes. So all kinds of fun, more playful kinds of things. The metaverse does use the real world as kind of like the metaphor for what's happening, but there aren't the physical limitations that we have in the real world. And you can even be, more creative or more, I don't know, it's different than real life, right? So there aren't those limitations. So it's a little bit different.
Professor Mitchell, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. At work, meeting in the office, interaction and collaborating. So Zoom or Google Meet is kind of collaborating, interacting by in human virtually between you and me. But we didn't say this is metaverse. Metaverse is we need kind of a 3D the avatars instead of me and working for me or something like that. So can we say we are in metaverse world or not?
I would not call Zoom a metaverse, right? I think that the metaverse needs to be more immersive. You need to be more in the space than you are when you're on a Zoom call. Like the grid of heads is not really the same thing as a metaverse. So I would not call this a metaverse. Yeah, great question. And I do have some kind of work examples too that I'll show later, so you can really see like what that would look like if you were collaborating with somebody in a 3D environment, which would be different than what we're used to with Zoom and Teams. So a virtual world is a specific instantiation of a metaverse. So like if you're talking about one specific instance or implementation, but we kind of use all those terms interchangeably. We say virtual world, metaverse, virtual space, virtual world environment. They're all kind of referring to that immersive space where we're able to bring our avatar. There are some, based on that last question, there are some collaboration technologies where people's heads are represented as avatars, but that's not necessarily like me being in that space, right? So it's still just kind of that 2D experience. So collaboration in these spaces can take place or can take format in a few different ways, but definitely it's focused on that immersive 3D environment, right? So here's a couple of pictures from some of my research projects. This one down here is an older Second Life example where you can see like the full body avatar. And then this one up here was 3D immersive technologies. I also have this one on my list for later, but you can kind of see these are my students' presentations. So it's definitely like a conference kind of situation where you can walk by and see the posters on the wall, and it feels like you're actually at that conference experiencing those posters, right? So, and then there's a table we can go sit down and talk if we wanted to do something like that. Usually in a metaverse, you have different communication channels. So you would expect to see text communication, voice communication, the video communication. There's still a lot of that like internet lingo and slang happening. So all your BRB, LOL kinds of shortcuts that people are using is happening in there too. The avatars are a really important part of a metaverse experience because you do have the full body interaction, and it's also configurable to however you want to look, right? So your avatar doesn't necessarily have to look like you. You could look like anything that you wanted to. And so there's some kind of, I don't know, play element to that avatar as well. The other thing about the avatars is that you really have to control your nonverbals, right? If we were talking in person and I wanted to like look the other way or accidentally or like do something and I'm looking the other way and I'm not paying attention to you, that's maybe less intentional than an avatar's experience. If I wanted my avatar to look the other way, I would actually have to tell my avatar that we're going to look this way, right? And so pay attention to something else. So it's definitely very controlled nonverbals. It's not the kind of thing like in real life, you sometimes can't control your nonverbals. You just have reactions, right? And so it's much different that way. But your interactions are lifelike. Yeah, go ahead.
Your paper published in 2009, which means you are starting the paperwork of probably 2007, something like that. At that time, actually 3D rendering technology and multiple communication channels already existed, but it's not the seamlessly workable.
Yes, so, it was much more laggy and not as good of an experience.
So what do you think before the 10 years before the metaverse world and now, based on your expertise, is a concept is almost the same, but the rendering technology would be very different. So is that only the part we are different before 10 years ago now?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the concept, pretty similar with what we were looking at before. But you're right, the technology has definitely leaped ahead in that time. I would also say the number of options that we have available to us has jumped ahead, right? And the same thing is true with collaboration technologies, right? If I think about Zoom and Teams, you know, we were using similar technologies to this. I remember in 2004, I was using a software that was a collaboration tool just like these, that was very cool. But you know, that was the only one available, and not that many people were using it. And so the more that adoption curve moves along and that you more have interest in it, then the more mainstream they become. And then that also, you know, it also they get better over that time too. So that's all a part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So the communication capabilities are still pretty consistent and the same, right? The voice, the text chat, instant message. You can instant message in a metaverse. You can talk to just the person that you specifically want to talk to. You can also do like a group of people that you would like to talk to. You can send messages just like in the area that you are. So anybody in that area could see it. So you can be more specific too. Like, you know, if you do a text chat, like people within 20 meters would see you or something like that. If you say something out loud, then people within about 20 virtual metaverse meters would be able to hear you, right? So, but it is similar to what we would have in the real world, right? You can say something and people will hear you. It's the same kind of thing in a metaverse environment. Okay, benefits of the metaverse. What are our thoughts on that? I want to ask that question too. So we have some people that have had that experience, but just what do you guys think that some of the benefits of the metaverse might actually be? Like, what is it that we would be interested in, or that we would value, or that we see some kind of potential in the metaverse? Is it really just to have fun? Is it so we can do something productive? What are the benefits that we might?
For me, as a tourism researcher, we can be able to preview the destination before we going, and we can make a schedule or pre-traveling planning before we actually visit a destination. So metaverse is one kind of.
And there's really cool things about previewing where you're going, and you could even preview like the specific room that you're going into, or the specific tourist location that you're going to. So yeah, lots related to that.
So I
Oh, there we go. Broader or border free. Yeah, border free. We'll go anywhere. Yes, time and space restrictions. Yeah, that's great. Save energy to go to a specific physical space. Yeah, experience something that is impossible or unreal. That's a great one. And there's lots of ways that can actually take place. I have some great examples for that later too that I'll go into too. So yeah, interaction during pandemic. This is a big one too. And I'll talk more about that as well. So there are some companies, you know, that were hoping to have these employee interactions that they were not able to have, right? So then they came to a metaverse to have those experiences. So we'll talk about some of those too. Yeah. Physical limitations is a big one, especially during COVID. Yes, working from home using the metaverse, meeting people without interaction. Yeah, so, and that full body experience too, I think is good. Yeah, great. No limitations for time, space, money. Those are, yeah. You can have an experience without having to spend the money to go have that experience. So yeah, great answers, guys. Okay, so I have some more on here too, but very similar. You're able to meet with diverse people from various locations in the same meeting space at the same time and have that. So really good for that synchronous communication and being able to be in the same space at the same time. You can be anybody that you want. So a couple people mentioned the physical limitations, but really that extends much farther than that too, right? Like I can literally have my avatar be anything that I want to be, right? So that's another point too. I don't have to be who I am specifically. You can present the whole body, so not just my Zoom head, but I get to have the whole body. I'm actually not very tall in real life, so you can't tell. You can't tell, but maybe my avatar will be very tall, right? Like I can be different than I am. It's a more enhanced of a realistic experience, a richer, intentional interactions. And of course, the development and business opportunities are important there too. Okay, good. I want to, on the opposite of all of those benefits, I want to have you weigh in on the downsides or challenges. What do you think some of the challenges of the metaverse might be? So things that, you know, could be more difficult or that we would be worried about.
Design.
Yeah, design, technology difficulties for sure.
Rendering time.
The immersion as a challenge, yes. For lots of reasons, right? There's lots of reasons. Security, yes. Accessibility, bad technology, internet. Yeah, heaviness of the platform, that's a big one too. Like, you know, the technology requirements and strains on your machines or devices can be very intense with these high graphical interfaces, right? So that's a big one too. Social presence is another one. You know, I think that's something also, even if you use the pandemic as an example where we were lacking that social connectivity. And so maybe there are ways that the metaverse can address some of that, but really not totally, right? Because we're still not fully there. So it's not really in person like we would want. Criminal activities, yes, that's a big one. Legal, ethical concerns for sure.
And Oculus device.
Yes. Cybercrime. Yes. Resistance, that's another one. Moral hazards, yes, there's lots of moral concerns. So the legal and ethical both. Misrepresentation, yeah, I just said I was going to make my avatar taller, but I can actually misrepresent myself in many ways, right? And so some of them could, height is not one of the concerning ones, but there are many other concerning misrepresentation issues that could come up. And isolation too. I'll talk more about this as well, but you definitely have people who could potentially become addicted to this not real world, right? And then sort of isolate themselves from the actual real world and become isolated and stay home. So yeah, these are all great answers too. Good job, you guys. Thanks for weighing in. Okay, So I would echo all of those same challenges that you all brought up. I would, also say that primarily synchronous communication is a challenge. You don't have as much asynchronous connection abilities as you would from maybe some other collaboration technologies. The learning curve is a little bit hard. It's definitely getting easier. Oculus makes it easy for sure, right? But it is still a learning curve, and not everybody's, some people are more resistant to that. Hardware demands for sure, trouble of access. There's not like screen readers for these metaverse environments, so it's not even something that is accessibly working for everyone. The lack of motivation or awareness of the benefits, right? So maybe like, the adoption curve does have an area where not everybody's ready to adopt. And so this could be one of those things that not everybody's ready. You do have to accept it. Familiarity, maybe you're worried, like, I'll go into this space and I won't know anybody, and I won't, maybe that's good to push yourself and be able to connect to new people. But also, like, if you don't know anybody there, why do you want to go? And then also disruptive players happen. There's lots of examples of this where maybe you are having a work meeting or connecting with people more professionally, and then you have some kind of, interrupters that are coming in and interrupting what you guys are doing. So disruptive players can be another one. The term metaverse actually came from a book called Snow Crash in 1992, is when that book had come out originally. And they were really looking at some kind of virtual reality follow on to the internet, right? And so they were using digital avatars to escape reality and kind of join this other online world. So that's really where that idea and the term are actually coming from in the past. So that's what we think of there. But there are lots of movies about this, and increasingly I feel like there's another one coming out all the time, right? So in 2009, there was a movie called Surrogates of Bruce Willis that really showed people living their whole life as an avatar, right? And so they were really just locked in their rooms, and they were sending their avatar out to go have their actual experiences. Ready Player One was one that came out in 2018. This one was actually based on a book, but a very popular movie that came out from that. And then Free Guy came out in August, so just this past August. And that's maybe the most current one that kind of shows what that metaverse life might be like. So lots of movies, examples to kind of show what we're that just illustrates the popularity and the increased attention that's happening in the metaverse. Second Life was one of the first sort of key players in the metaverse world. They actually came out in 2003 as a 3D virtual world, allowing for social interaction, collaboration, immersion, development. They have their own money, Linden dollars, in that space, so their own currency, where they're actually able to have people spending money and making money in that space. They're still around, they're still an option, but there's many more players in the space today. Here is a list of some of those current players, and I've kind of grouped these categories so that you can kind of see what we have available to us. So development is one of the big spaces, right? A lot of groups are interested in having new worlds developed or land developed or the skills to be able to develop something, right? So that's definitely been one area. Education is another one. That's another important one where we want students to feel comfortable and learning, and Metaverse Studio has been a big one there. Minecraft even has an education edition so that you can do Minecraft for class projects and problems. Mindtest is another one. I think that one's more open source than the Minecraft version, but very similar. And then Spark AR is another one. In the entertainment space, I put Second Life in the entertainment space. I think that primarily people are just like having a fun time in there, but Active Worlds, Facebook's Horizon. So that's another one that's kind of in that space, and VR chat. Gaming, there's lots of examples in the gaming space, of course. I think that probably the metaverse really thrives in that gaming environment. So Axie Infinity, Core, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, The Sims, all very popular gaming examples. And then in the workspace, that 3D immersive collaboration, that was one of the screenshots that I showed earlier with the student papers on the walls. Branch is another one. I'll show a video on that one a little bit later. Horizon Workrooms, that's kind of the Facebook's Horizon Entertainment. The Horizon Workroom one is the one that's more office collaboration oriented. And then
unfortunately, we don't see tourism industry software and application.
We don't, but I do have some examples of what's happening there.
Okay.
There's just not any like specific category of tools developed in that area, right? They would be adopting some of these others. But yeah, I have some examples there. And Sandbox is the other one there. So lots of good examples. If you're looking for like where you should be spending some attention, you know, screenshot this page. This has got some good tools on there. And then definitely, probably you're noticing a lot of growing attention in the metaverse, right? Particularly with Facebook renaming themselves to the name Meta, right? So that's really triggered a lot of the new attention. But I would also say the more that we are learning and hearing and seeing more attention on NFTs and investment in that space, which, and I'll talk more about these two later, but that's definitely another reason that we're seeing an increased attention in the metaverse. So now that there's like legitimately money and opportunity, there's a lot more attention. Even business leaders are potentially interested in the metaverse as an option, right? So this was a recent survey, I think that came out last year. 57% of future business value for a company, according to CFOs and CMOs, thought that there's some potential in the metaverse, right? A little bit less for significant potential, but definitely some potential is being recognized as in the metaverse as a space for businesses to pay attention to. And then I have a little bit of an explanation. This video from Mark Zuckerberg, I'll play about 2 minutes, I think, and we can hear his explanation of what the metaverse will look like according to Meta, right?
It is time for us to adopt a new company brand to encompass everything that we do. To reflect who we are and what we hope to build, I am proud to announce that starting today, our company is now Meta. Our mission remains the same. It's still about bringing people together. Our apps and their brands, they're not changing either. And we are still the company that designs technology around people. Hey, and welcome to Connect. Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse, starting with the most important experience of all, connecting with people. Imagine you put on your glasses or headset and you're instantly in your home space. It has parts of your physical home recreated virtually, it has things that are only possible virtually, and it has an incredibly inspiring view of whatever you find most beautiful.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah, just gotta find something to wear. All right, perfect.
Boy.
Oh, hey, Mark. Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
Mark. What's up, Mark?
Whoa, we're floating in space? Who made this place? It's awesome.
Right? It's from a crater I met in LA.
This place is amazing.
Boz, that you?
Of course it's me. You know I had to be the robot, man.
I thought I was supposed to be the robot.
Whoa.
I knew you were bluffing.
Hey, wait. Where is Naomi?
Let's call her.
Naomi.
Hey, should we deal you in?
Hey. Sorry, I'm running late, but you gotta see what we're checking out. There's an artist going around Soho hiding AR pieces for people to find.
3D street art? That's cool.
Send that link over so we can all look at it.
So you can see in the video how, you know, it's the full body immersive experience where everybody's kind of coming together in that virtual space and flying around and looking different. But that's the reason that they're using it there. And so I think that that was a good
It
example.
is time.
But definitely metaverses are getting a lot more attention, right? The media, like we saw, and Facebook Meta's changes, attention in research, which has been continuing over this last decade for sure. Practice and even education is another space too. So all that suggests, there's a need to understand the opportunities that we have and understand the benefits and the challenges, and overall continue to enhance what we know. So I want to talk a little bit about what the research has shown us thus far, right? Like what we know, and specifically some of the studies that I've been a part of. So it was mentioned the study that we did in 2009, which actually, you're right, started a couple of years before that. And my research team was working to understand, conceptually what we needed to really look at and look at to understand the metaverse. So I do have a code there that you can look at the paper in more detail if you want, but this is really the key piece of that paper, is the conceptual model that we put together. And you can see in here, like, the key concepts that are important as you are studying this topic. It's definitely understanding the metaverse as a whole, but within that, we have people that are represented by avatars. So that's an important concept to look into. The behaviors of those people, and how they're actually working and connecting with other people in that space, and what those behaviors might look like. And then as the technology capabilities is another part of that, right? Because all those things are working together within the metaverse. You have people using technology represented as avatars and the behaviors that they're displaying. So all that's taking place within the metaverse. And then the outcomes that we are looking at, the support and the quality and self-image is a big part of that too, like how they're being reflected and portrayed, and viewed on the other end. Cultural synchronicity is another piece. Deception, right? So the moral question that came up earlier and the ethics and those concerns, deception is a part of that as well. Intent to immerse was another interesting concept that came up in that. And then also that reconnect anxiety, right? Like the desire to continue to stay in that space, or be back into the space and not be in your real space, but continue to connect back into that virtual space. So these were the key concepts that we really pulled out as interesting at that time. And I think that they have continued to persist over time. And we see a lot of research that's also calling back on trying to extend in these different areas. So definitely still a valuable model for us in understanding what the metaverse's possibilities might be.
Okay, Professor Mitchell, here's my question. Still very valuable model. I totally agree with you, because I reading your papers and I contact you and I invite you to this research colloquiums. Especially, I'm tourism researcher and then smart tourism researcher. From your perspective, generally, I bring it to specifically to the tourism context, especially this one, self-image. We gotta go traveling and take a picture or take a photo of a selfie to manipulate myself or whatever. That's a self-image. And also cultural synchronicity. Like we've been to America and I see the New York, LA, or wherever, and I try to get cultural experience. And also reconnect anxiety, something like that. After I seen the metaverse world and the preview and inspiring me to visit there, that's a reconnect. So
yes,
out of your general, concept, I bring it to the specific my context and adapt the variable to our research area.
Yeah, and I will. Yeah, I think that all of these, you're right, have application in smart tourism for sure, especially if we think about the self-image and that viewing yourself as a traveler and somebody who has seen places, right? There are, because the metaverse doesn't have the physical limitations, it also kind of gives you another experience, right? So I think this came up in one of the comments that were shared earlier, and how you can have a limitless experience, right? Where you do not have the constraints that you would have, or be able to have an experience that's different than what you might actually have. And there are some good examples of that, where you can go and do something that maybe you couldn't have gone and done otherwise, right? Or I think that there is, general concerns like, will people not want to travel if they're just traveling in the metaverse, right? Like if I see it here, will I not want to see it? But at the same time, there's also the thought that if you do travel there in the metaverse, then maybe it would make you more interested in traveling there in real life, right? So like if you have, so I think that there's both sides of that as a possibility.
Yeah. So reconnecting is very important and vital to us, because the virtual place of, a certain place, virtual place inspiring me to, physical place. That's a reconnecting.
Yes. Yeah. That I think every one of them, I think you're right. The three that you flagged specifically would be a good path to continue looking at too. So what that research was showing us is that, the metaverse does present a new way for people to get together, that's different than what they had been doing before, right? Even that term isn't that old. It hasn't been around that long. So you definitely are able to bring people from different geographical locations. They can come together, they can create their avatars, and they would have a face-to-face immersive experience, full body experience, in that unique representation in a 3D space where they are synchronously and at that immediate time able to connect, right? So, and talk about things and express themselves in an experience that they wouldn't be able to do in that moment otherwise, right? So that's one of the key values that we have in the metaverse. We actually extended that conceptual model a little bit more in another study where we wanted to look at, in practice, like, what does this actually mean, right? So if we understand it conceptually, then now we want to understand it more in practice. So we went a little bit further in this next paper. And we had groups that were actually collaborating in the virtual world. And it kind of looks similar over here, right? We have the avatars and their behaviors. We were bringing in the technology capabilities and the people. And then we have this out of world artifacts and experience that come out of that experience overall. So we definitely were looking at how those people were working together and how they were collaborating in the metaverse, and trying to understand the new technology capabilities that we hadn't had before. Some of those specific ones would be the configurable appearance, right? So people having the opportunity to change the way that they look, that they, would be much harder to change in real life. The controlled nonverbals is another big one. So the fact that if you want to actually look at somebody, you have to make the initiative to have your avatar look that way. And then also the immediacy of artifacts. This is another really cool possibility in a metaverse. If you come into the space to collaborate with somebody, and normally if you were brainstorming, maybe you'd have a whiteboard and some Post-its and you could like draw or talk about what you were trying to explain. But in the metaverse, if I want to say like, oh, I'm thinking of like a box that looks like this, I can just build that, right? Like I can immediately pop up a box and stretch it out the way that I want. That's part of what happens in that space, right? Like I have the ability to make shapes and form them and sort of have other people come and touch them. And so that immediacy of artifacts is a different thing than we're used to too. So we looked at that a little bit more. We actually had some participants in our study build a Rube Goldberg machine. So those are like the examples where you have like a ball coming down and then it hits something and that triggers some other event and that triggers some other event. And so that's what they were tasked to do. You can kind of see in these pictures, the groups were coming together. They were all standing in a circle, looking at one another, just like we would have done in real life, right? Like they bring their avatars together to talk to one another. You can see they're talking bubbles over their heads, the objects that they were creating so that they could have that Rube Goldberg experience. And it's also not like super pretty, right? Like the technology has come a ways since then. So this was what it looked like back when we had done this study before. They did have instructions over here on the wall, so they were able to come in and read their instructions for their task and then kind of work together in that space. And they had some specific tools that they could use to kind of work together. So we actually paid Metaverse money for our participants to participate, and they were real like active Metaverse participants, so they knew how to build those different artifacts and they were comfortable in that space. So we didn't have to worry about, like resistance or lack of understanding. We had people that knew what they were doing. And then we had a survey that they took at the end of the task. We also captured all of their text logs and recorded some video segments of them working together, as well as some still shot images. So survey results and the chat logs and the images and video are what we use to analyze the experience. So primarily they did rely on the chat tool much more than the voice tool. I don't know if that would still be the same. I think that the voice tools have maybe come a little bit farther, but the other reason that the chat is more predominant is because if you are manipulating your avatar in some way, you can't manipulate your voice in the same way, right? So that's perhaps one of the reasons that the chat is more popular, or at least in this case. They definitely were focused on building a shared understanding and using the chat tool to make sure that they were all on the same page. They used a lot of internet lingo, shortcuts, especially for those faster text conversations. Not much use of gestures, right? Because you have to be really intentional, and they just weren't taking their time to do that so much as to chat.
Okay,
but they did stand face to face, which was very interesting, right? Like they don't have to stand face to face; they just have to be in that space, and they can still chat and read. So it is interesting that they position themselves that way.
In my opinion about why the young generation and why people prefer to use chat rather than voice. Voice is one kind of a analog, real life. The chat is, like when you said, manipulated dialogue and communication. We don't need to show up myself. So that's why the chat is we are prepared. Especially my students are asking me to something using chat, which means they don't want to talk to me in voice.
I'm sure they want to talk to you. They just want to chat, text chat it. But yes, yeah, I think that that's probably part of it too, right? It's the same about like turning your camera on or using your voice. And you don't want to feel like you're interrupting, and you'll just use the chat instead. I think all of those things, maybe we're getting more comfortable with chat, could be part of it too. It could be a lot of different reasons. We definitely saw the use of the artifacts being built right away, which was very cool. There wasn't really any leaders emerging. Everybody was sort of just working together at the same time. And even the extra tools that the teams had available, they didn't really use those as much. Even when they were prompted to use them, they were more focused on just building their own tools. So those were all interesting things that we found. Specific challenges, it is kind of a technology that not everybody's used to. So that was a thing for us specifically. I think that there definitely is an increased adoption today, but that still doesn't mean everybody's comfortable. It's not like Zoom. Even Zoom, which we've been using for a while, at least 2015, I think, didn't get the increased adoption that it has today until COVID, right? So there has to be some kind of like push or motivator to get people to really adopt things widespread like that. Which means like a Metaverse is still very important and still not mature yet. So like when you said, Zoom is become one of the world famous communication channel due to the Corona effect. So someday we need the kind of the phenomenon or something accidental event for enlarging, ensuring the Metaverse world. Now it's uncomfortable and That's I would say sometimes as people use technologies in their personal lives more, then we start to see those pushed into work lives. Like if you think about like the Amazon Alexa or Siri or something like that, as people become comfortable, we don't see those at work a lot. Those are not used a lot in business, but everybody has, Siri in their pocket or a Google Home or an Amazon Alexa at their house. So as we become more used to having those things in our home or personal usage, then we might see them move into the workspace a little bit more. So that could be another like slower adoption. Maybe, I don't know. I do think that that's an important point though. Like the Zoom adoption was unprecedented just based on a crisis, right? I certainly don't want a crisis to happen to make us adopt metaverses, but that is a point, right? So yeah, acceptance of that tool. The other couple interesting challenges that came up in the research process, it was IRB approval. So getting sort of research approval that we could manipulate participants in a space, that like we didn't really like, have it, we couldn't see them signing off on things, right? So that was definitely a trickier process, or just like having some general grant support and office support for doing those kinds of research projects. Coordination is another one. The type of study that we're doing, is that, manipulating avatars and technology in a space and participants, all of those were challenges for what we were doing early on. Lessons learned, we did, talk a lot about the communication and coordination piece. And so thinking outside the box, all of those are lessons that we came out of that project with. We definitely thought that these metaverse and virtual worlds were unique, but they are similar. They have some overlap with other virtual collaboration technologies. And so that could be another point too, just because people are more comfortable with Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Zoom and Google Drive and all of them, right? Like SharePoint, the more that people are using collaboration technologies, the more that the metaverse could emerge as one that is a go-to or more recognized for the benefits and value. But lots of opportunities for future studies. And in fact, there have been lots of studies since those early research papers had come out. We still don't really know what the metaverse will look like, but we are in a place now where we can more clearly identify what the opportunities look like. And so that's the next thing that I wanted to go into is I have, I think, 13 different areas of opportunity for everybody to kind of consider. Gaming is the first one. Gaming is for sure the biggest area of development, definitely a leader in the metaverse. And there was a whole category on gaming, right? There's a lot of options for metaverse gaming. So people are coming together, participating, collaborating, being creative in a metaverse. Fortnite is one of the leaders. They're even doing concerts and events in Fortnite. And so bringing in users for those events, right? Like, that's definitely like, you could travel and go see Travis Scott in concert, or you can watch him in Fortnite, right? So those are your options. And so that's another big one in the gaming space. Minecraft, The Sims, also really well known. The thing that's nice about The Sims is a lot of times you think the metaverse environments are more for a male population, but The Sims is also known for attracting women and other non-gamers into that space. So it doesn't have to be just like maybe more the stereotypical kind of gamer that would be in that space. The Sims has been kind of broadened that reach a little bit. But people are coming into the space, they're gathering, they're spending time, they're spending money. And so those are things that are something that we pay attention to. You can kind of see, the gaming app interest right here. Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, those are kind of the top three that we're seeing for children spending their time in those spaces in 2019 and 2020. So lots of attention in those top three. Among Us, Pokemon Go, those are some other ones over here. But those metaverse gaming environments are very popular for the young kids in their time.
So, Michelle, actually, the gaming industry lead the metaverse industry. So, and the audience from there. Yes. Actually, my son are doing greatly the Noblex game, Fortnite game, whatever. But to me, it's a kind of a barrier of, in front of me, so I cannot get in that area. So yeah. So gaming actually is show us the actual, actual avatars, actual, interface, actual, interaction and exchange, communication, whatever. So it's one kind of a metaverse is a gaming industry, is it?
Yeah, and that's the point I was making before, right? Like, as we use these things in our personal lives, or gaming, for example, as we're so tied to metaverse kinds of games, then that will be something that we want to see at work, or that will be something that we're more accepting of in any other situation, right? We become like really interested in this game, right? Like we're comfortable talking to other avatars, and so we extend that into other spaces. And so that's kind of another driver that could happen too, right? Like I used to think the same thing about Mac and PC. Like we were supposed to be using PCs, but all my students wanted to buy Macs, right? So at what point are all my students in a management position and they're all putting Macs in the whole company, right? It's the same thing. So these students at one point, they're going to be in management positions and they're going to be more open to metaverse solutions, right? Yeah. So then if we're just asking research questions in this space, can we learn more about game adoption and success? Like what is making these particular metaverse games the more popular ones? Is there something about the stickiness that is making them more successful? Is there something about contributing to worldness or belonging or community or popularity that is causing these games to be more sticky and more successful? And what can we learn about that so that we can apply those same concepts to the other metaverse environments, right? Also, what's the economic function of these games? Like is there value to be had there? And then also I have some citations out here. There was a paper from Petter et al. That talked about gaming as a digital workforce skill, right? So if that was a MIS quarterly executive paper, so MISQ executive paper that talked about metaverse and gaming in that space as being a digital workforce skill, preparing students and for future jobs in a technology position, right? So that's maybe another potential reason that we would care about gaming in a metaverse too, in terms of workforce preparation. So all good questions to ask in that space. That second category there is commerce. So digital ownership is especially an interesting topic as we talk about the metaverse. There are lots of interesting and innovative aspects to care about there, especially as we talk about NFTs or non-fungible tokens. So in a metaverse, you can have avatars that are buying clothes or shoes that have been specifically designed for their avatar, right? And so they're going to spend money on those digital items and products, and they're going to own those digital items and products. And so that's another space that we can think about an opportunity there. There's also the purchasing of digital accessories. So NFTs, art, music, and they're going to own that art and music, and it's just digital and just electronic. And so that's another commerce opportunity. We also have people buying moments or experiences. So the concert examples I was talking about, going online to have the concert ticket and concert experience in that virtual world, or traveling or having vacations and spending money on these virtual vacations and these virtual experiences. So another reason to pay attention, right? And then also land development. So there's a lot of investment in metaverse land development and purchasing space and building buildings and renting those buildings, or commercial retail shops and renting that space, right? So leases and rentals and all of that's happening in the metaverse too. So definitely, potential for a new kind of economy, a new kind of commerce. You could also even see digital catalog. So just like we talked about, traveling virtually somewhere before you actually physically go there. The same thing could be said for retail and shopping, right? You can go into a metaverse and see like the shoes or the shirt that you want to buy. And we can call it like a showroom, like a digital showroom, and then actually buy it in real life, right? So, or you can have chatbots and AI chatbots, customer service, and I can go and ask, like, if I wanted to have this experience, I ask the chatbot all the questions that I would want to ask, and then I feel more confident before I actually go and have that real experience, right? So lots of opportunities in commerce, I think, especially in the metaverse and what that could look like. Some of it is pretty far-fetched, but like not really. Some of this is already happening, so it's not totally. This is actually a Walmart example of what the Walmart metaverse shopping experience.
Great. Looks like you need a good wine pairing. Take a look to your right.
Wow.
Your age has already been pre-verified through your profile, so no need to wait for an ID check. Just place the item in your cart whenever you're ready. I'm getting a notification from your connected smart fridge. It looks like you already have a full gallon of milk at home. Should we put this one back? Hey, good news, your oil change is done. Your vehicle will be ready at the Tire and Lube Express. I've added the service charge to your cart. Now for the fun stuff. To electronics.
This is weird.
You definitely saved the best for last. This TV has great reviews on Walmart.com. Add it to your cart, and I'll have it brought to the front for you. Need any accessories? Here are some options on Jet.com.
So it definitely is a weird experience, right? It is weird, but it does kind of marry the physical and the virtual. We can see even as they're adding products to their cart, they have extra information that's coming up. She even said like you can get it for cheaper over here, right? So that's kind of a cool feature. This video is actually kind of old. It's a couple years old. I think 2017 is when the video came out. So it's not like, you know, the metaverse just is coming up with these ideas. This idea has been around for a while, and Walmart has had this video out.
Here's my argument. You know, the Walmart show us very good example of metaverse, the commerce case. But as you know, we still there's a transactional information processing is workable, but we still need that material and that matter come to my mouth, and we need to taste it and then drink it and drunken, and then just like we are human beings. So
yes,
how the metaverse tools figure out that human desire and then taste, it's impossible. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say the online grocery orders over the course of the pandemic they moved forward 5 years in projections of where they had expected to be, right? Like people were still planning, like grocery stores were thinking it would be 5 years before we had this many people adopting online shopping. So that pushed us forward already, and potentially this would be another thing, right? Like maybe you don't want to go to Walmart to get your groceries, but maybe you want to browse around and see if they have different things, right? And so maybe this would be a way. And you have that chat bot, that very helpful woman that can answer your questions. So it's like a personal shopper that you can talk with. And so maybe those things make it a different experience. And right, maybe it's not for everybody. Maybe you're not going to buy any new products that way. But maybe you would be comfortable browsing or buying products that you do know about. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. It's definitely, I mean, they put this out there as what the possibilities could be, but they could even be something different still. Yeah, it's hilarious, kind of. So research opportunities that you can ask in the commerce space, you know, how does spending in the real world compare to virtual world? Are people, you know, will people spend more in the real world? Will they spend more in a virtual world? Like, what's that like? If I think that the cost of going to a concert is X amount of dollars, what does that look like in dollars in a metaverse, right? Do I think that that's worth more? Do I think that that's worth less? Am I going to buy more of them? Am I going to buy less of them? All of those are interesting kinds of questions. How are NFTs going to compare, right? And are they going to impact the price of actual physical products for the digital products? I don't know. That kind of remains to be seen. The AI customer service bots are also very interesting. So I think that personal shopper, as I'm walking through the store, might be pretty helpful, right? Maybe she's going to know everything I have questions about, which is kind of interesting. And also we can see that in a physical store too. I know some grocery stores right now are doing like robots that go up and down the aisle to help answer questions or change prices on products. So So potentially there will be a blurring both directions, physical and virtual. And then even, do we trust these? Like, what factors impact my trust with this virtual chatbot agent, right? Like, is she telling me the truth? Is she telling me crazy things? Like, I don't know. So that's another kind of question to ask. And then security is, of course, going to be a concern too. You can see in the video, they automatically verified how old I was, if I was able to buy the wine. But who's really doing that? Where's that going? How's that working? So, and if you're spending money in dollars and NFTs, and how's the security working on that too? So those are all important kind of research paths and questions to ask. Education is another great one. Obviously, we all care about education. That's why we're here. And the possibilities for education in the metaverse are also very interesting. So the intent is to be more immersive, right? So instead of like learning about something in a book or a lecture, you could actually be in a history class that's actually in history, right? Like you could have that experience and see and feel a little bit more what it would be like than just having a discussion or reading about it, right? So it's a little bit different. We've also seen a lot of college campuses. At one point in Second Life, there were 170 universities that had some sort of reflection of their university in a metaverse, right? So this is the Ohio University one. You could walk around and get comfortable with the campus in that virtual space without actually going on campus, right? And that's very cool. Can you imagine just being able to go tour any university and see what that would be like? You could check out a lot more universities. You could maybe go sit in some different classes. And so that's another cool opportunity too.
That can be one of the travel context.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. We definitely care about, as students are making college decisions, they go travel to a bunch of different colleges. And if they want to go travel to more of them, or maybe they're not sure, they can go virtually visit and see if they even wanted to see that one in real life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Simulation has been a big thing too. And in the metaverse, we have law simulations and trials that were those students were able to practice their law trial in a metaverse before they actually did it in real life. And so that's kind of a good experience. Healthcare, same thing. Simulation is very big in healthcare. And I've even seen at my university, actually, we have an education group and they're training counselors through the use of avatars. So they're able to answer and advise mental health issues and have counselors kind of practice in a safe virtual environment before they would practice with a real person.
And this kind of example, I invite you to our research colloquium, and now we are listening your presentation and your metaverse education. Actually, comparing the before COVID, this is impossible.
Right.
Now we are directly learning from you about the metaverse from a distance.
Yeah, this is the exact opportunity, right? And if we were in a metaverse, I would be standing on the front podium and you would be sitting in the chairs, and so it would be even more immersive, right?
Yes.
And then also in the education, I just wanted to mention too, the development of metaverse space and technology is also a part of that. So Spark AR is the Meta Facebook one, and they're hoping to, increase development interest and creators and in the tech space too. So more people to build metaverse applications is also another kind of education.
I guess so. Mm-hmm.
This is an example. This is a study that used Minecraft education solution to teach agile project management methodology. So they had students kind of working together. They had to design an Olympic Games infrastructure, and it definitely shows that immediacy of artifacts that we were talking about. So the students followed the agile practices, but they were able to actually build something in Minecraft education and test it out. So definitely another example of the metaverse and education, where the students are actually able to get hands-on experience and do something rather than just like talking about it or reading about it. So other kinds of questions, what value can be found in using metaverses for social or collaborative learning? What disciplines does this make sense for, right? Does it just have to be technology disciplines? I mentioned law, healthcare. So lots, obviously it's not just technology, but that's another question, right? Are there certain disciplines where it makes more sense than others? And then the e-learning, just like we were just mentioning, right? Like being able to learn online from any distance location is another one. Are there generational limits on this? Does this matter to just a certain population, or could it be more applicable? And then also there's some research taking place on neurodiverse students, and maybe the metaverse being a good opportunity for those types of students. So that's another space for more attention and inclusion. Teamwork and collaboration is a good one, right? Especially as we think about the work opportunities, instead of just seeing everybody on a Zoom grid, can we actually visit virtual office spaces? And then Horizon Workrooms is the one for this, right? So using the Oculus VR headset, Metaverse is using that Horizon Workrooms to help us have in-office collaborations in a virtual world. So more understanding about virtual collaboration, teamwork, and how we're making decisions and working together. I have a couple of examples on this one. Loom is a company, they do video. So videos, if you've heard of Loom before, they basically let you record quick video memos and messages for work and collaboration. But they wanted to get their team together. So they bought Oculus headsets for everybody on their team. Because of the pandemic, they weren't able to have any in-person meetings. And so they bought Oculus headsets, and then they went on a work retreat, and they had to work together to build a pirate ship. And that was kind of like their fun thing, right? So they were able to walk up and say hi to people, and it felt like different than a Zoom meeting felt to them. The story of this was actually outlined in this book called Out of Office, so they talk about it in there. But one of the issues that came up is that they did have some disruptive participants come and interrupt what they were doing and start throwing rocks at their pirate ship. And so now it's kind of a joke about having disruption in their meetings and rocks thrown at them, is one example there. The other example, this is a technology called Branch. So it's another metaverse, and it shows office spaces. So this is one of the little employees, and you can kind of see it's like an office layout. And he could walk over to one of the other offices. There we go. So he can come into one of these offices and talk to somebody, which would be different than like on Zoom. And you can see the chat is going over here. His avatar is not very cute. He's just like a little blob head, but he does kind of walk around and go in. And they have a pool table. So it's kind of reflective of an actual office. Conference room where you could have lots of people coming to work together. Yeah, there he goes. Now he's moving. Well, this is just kind of this illustrates, like how you could go into an office space.
I agree with that. That is going to be a future direction, and the future will come true. But at this moment, that is very worked.
Yes, it is
just
very
like a toy, something
silly. Yeah, especially because he's just like a little head. So questions in here, how can teamwork work? And what are the technology capabilities specifically that we need to support that? Are there capabilities that are different than what we would do in Zoom or Teams, right? What about having that full body experience would be more valuable? Is there certain tasks that we actually would need that versus others? And then even, the question, does the metaverse offer the potential to make up for the loss of synchronous collaboration if we move from a physical office to a virtual office or a hybrid office? Is that going to be something that we want to do? And are in-world connections necessary? What cases would we use that versus video conferencing or something else? Socializing and entertainment is another category. So as human beings, we gravitate towards immersion and community and fun. And the metaverse does offer those things. So avatars have the possibility to purchase moments or experiences like concerts and trips and artwork and trying on clothing. and playing games with their friends, like we saw in the Mark Zuckerberg video, right? They were playing a card game, and it was like they were together. I definitely remember early on at the start of the pandemic, I remember, playing card games with my friends in different locations online. And so that's maybe another area of emphasis to focus on. NFTs and the potential for business opportunities and revenue is another reason to care about that. The concert one is one of the best examples. You can see Fortnite does the Soundwave series. They've had Ariana Grande and Travis Scott, and they actually put on concerts, performances in the Fortnite metaverse. And there's videos you can go watch and see, what that was like. And it was like going to a concert that you wouldn't have been able to go to otherwise, right? Like they're not actually anywhere close to me. so I could not see them unless I went to Fortnite, right? Or paid a lot of travel to go somewhere where they were.
Mhm.
So what are other examples of that, right? Like, are there other social entertainment activities that could take place in a metaverse? Is it just concerts? Is it just something like that? How does that compare with reality? Like, how much would I pay for an online experience versus the real one? How does that revenue scale? Lots of interesting questions about that socialization and entertainment piece. And travel is the next one that's very closely related, right? Those kinds of virtual experiences. So in terms of tourism and travel and virtual worlds, there are a lot of opportunities here. I think that there, are some thoughts that maybe business travel will disappear if we can do all of our business through some kind of collaboration technology. Are we not going to have as much business travel? Is it just going to be personal and leisure travel that's taking place? I even think that Google Maps Street View is a good kind of example of what the virtual world kind of travel could be like, right? You can go in Google Maps and put your little view right where you want to be and stand around and look around. It's the same kind of idea that a metaverse could provide. You could go, walk around in Google Maps and see what that might look like if you were to actually go there. So that's one kind of idea. But it doesn't have to be like, I want to travel there right now. I could say, I want to travel to this experience 10 years ago and see what it was like. So that's another interesting thing about the travel piece, is it doesn't have to be like this current moment. It could be at a specific time or a specific event that you wanted to experience and see if you could travel at that time. So that is a cool thing to consider too. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask. Actually, I have experienced Google Maps Street View from Oculus. And also, I use Google Maps through the smartphones. The smartphone is a 2-dimension, and Oculus is a 3 dimensions. But my feeling is very different. When I use the Google Maps in Oculus, I feel like immersively experienced, and I feel like it's something. Oh, I want to point out, and I want to go to London instantly from Seoul to London, and I look at the street view of London suddenly. But however, when I use the Google Street View from my smartphone, I just try to find out certain place to go, or certain, the meeting place I want to go, look around. So in my mind, is a 2-dimensional smartphone usage is kind of information processing to walk around and finding out the certain place is kind of just a map. But the Google Maps in Oculus is kind of a virtual place experience. So when I want to go, where I want to go from a distance and time difference before past and future and something like that. That's my currently experience between 2 devices.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're totally right? Like, I think that the Google Maps on your phone is definitely for more informational purposes. It's not for an immersive experience. It's trying to figure out, like, I'm trying to get here. How do I make that happen, right? So I totally agree with that. I even think that augmented reality is maybe even another path for that informational purpose. Like, like, I don't know, like we could have the pop-ups and say like, you're going the right way, right? Like something more helpful. The Oculus 3D experience is definitely more of the metaverse travel where you feel like you are having an experience. Like even the fact that it's all around you and you're in that space, that's more of the metaverse travel experience. I completely agree. And I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but there are, you can see like the exact hotel room that you want, right? Like you could potentially have, you can say like, a lot of times hotel websites are not super great at showing you what your room might look like. They just have one or two pictures and like, maybe that's what your room will look like, but not really. With this immersive view, you can actually go into your room, you can see what your view would be like. And then that would maybe sell you on having that experience even more, right? Like now I can't wait, right? Like I know what it's going to be and I can't wait. And activities, the same thing. Flights is another one. So Boeing, I think, is doing some cool stuff on like feeling like what your airplane ride might look like and seeing like what your seat is like and how long that flight is going to be. I can't really imagine that somebody wants to like virtually sit on a flight for as long as it would be, but they are developing that as an option. So you can see like, could I really go on the flight that long, right? Like, could I really make that trip? So those are all good.
Okay. So students, you must understand this slide, and it says a lot of the chance and opportunity ahead of us about research.
Yes, for sure. And this is a video. This is the Alanah Dubai example, right? Where you can come in and you're feeling that kind of immersive, like not really, this is just a video, but if you had the headset on, it would feel like, oh, you are there having the Dubai experience, and this would be what it would be like for you, right? And this is the hotel. Yeah, it's beautiful and you want to go there. And then this is another one. So the other idea that came up is, having an experience that you wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And this is an example in China where they have declared the first scenic spot metaverse research and development center. And they want to create the world of Avatar. So the world of Avatar, the movie, you would not be able to like replicate that in real life, but they're trying to like create this experience where you could replicate that in a metaverse. And so you could put on your headset and be in the metaverse, or have your avatar and be in that metaverse and have the experience of Avatar in their space, in their center, in their metaverse, right? So this is another kind of example. And this is newer it was in November that they had declared this, right? So this is another opportunity. And then questions, these are the good research questions, can a visit to a virtual beach actually really reinvigorate a person the same that, physically going to that beach could, right? That's a great question. Does that virtual experience actually give you the same recharge that the real experience would? Can a virtual travel experience actually persuade someone to travel somewhere that they weren't going to go otherwise, right? Like if I see that in my headset, does that make me want to go there and have that experience more? Are people, or on the other hand, are people less likely to go somewhere if they've virtually been there before? So both sides of that are interesting. Metaverse travel for disabled or homebound individuals, the game changer, right? The fact that they couldn't have had that experience and now they can have that experience. And then also augmented reality, I kind of mentioned, is that a different way to rethink travel too? So kind of like an assistant helping you as you're going through and having that experience. Can you use augmented reality to help out? So some good questions there. Community is another one. So community has definitely played a role over history. This book called Bowling Alone actually talks about how a long time ago, decades ago, community was really important in people's lives. Church groups and other groups they would be a part of, and there's been a decline in the last couple lately, the last century, of people and their feeling of community and belonging. The pandemic, I think, even highlighted that people need something outside of work. They can't just be virtually connected and working all the time. They have to have other things to do, like gyms and book clubs and bridge clubs and all these other kinds of communities. So the metaverse potentially offers a network or community or something that people can care about outside of work. It doesn't have to be work all the time. And you've come into the same place and you see the same people, and even if you're not going anywhere, you do still feel some kind of connection to that group. There's been some other examples. There's been lots of graduations over the course of the pandemic where, students who were a part of a student group in that community, they didn't get to have the face-to-face graduation experience that they would have wanted. So they had metaverse graduations in lots of groups. And you can see, this is happening in lots of examples where people were able to have that graduation experience with their student community that they didn't get to have. And so again, kind of tying them together.
Wow.
So what kind of communities can be developed in a metaverse? Maybe there's a travel and tourism committee or community that can be developed, and you can create people that like to travel and share that kind of communication. What makes people feel welcome and connected to a metaverse? How can that stickiness be developed? And can the virtual community have the same outcomes as a real life community? Can that still develop and create the good things that we need from it? Avatar representation is another one. We talked a little bit about deception and misrepresentation, but there's lots of attention being paid to avatars, how they look, the customizability, the realism, the attractiveness, all of those questions, and also the potential to overcome physical bias. So, maybe you have something that is holding you back in some way, and can you have an avatar that can represent you in a different way?
Actually, look back to the previous slide. Actually, avatar representation is a critical factor to hospitality industry and tourism industry, because we are like more hospital to the people.
Yes,
like just human anthropomorphism. Yes. So, but still, the avatar is not so much fancy enough,
right?
So probably sooner or later is anthropomorphism and customizability and attractiveness and likability, just like a human, natural human, we need. I think.
Yeah, I think that you're totally right in terms of customer service and all of the things that you just said, right? The likability. There have been a couple studies on this, right? So one study, this was actually the real researcher, and then these are the different, this was his simple 3D avatar, and then was his more realistic constructed avatar, and he was looking to see like which one was more well received, right? So the farther you can get to be more realistic, and the better, right? Like presumably, right? Or maybe you want to be a robot like in the other video. And then this is the other example too. This is from the Avatar movie, right? So there's a physical disability in this case. And then as an avatar, that physical disability is no longer an issue. So that's another representation point of the avatar that has as a benefit and things going forward too. So questions there, what can we learn about the design and acceptance and use of the natural face technologies? Is that making a difference? Do we have to have the natural face avatars to develop that sense of presence or that community or acceptance and likability, all those? Does avatar appearance impact trust in any way, right? Like, so if we have like the more 2D view or the more realistic view, like which one of 4 or 5 just like a blue creature, like what of those impacts the trust? Do we have emotional responses? All those are good questions. And then also, how the offline and online identities are related. Do people choose avatars that look like they do in real life, or do they do something else? And so I think that's another question.
Also, this various sense of presence to our context is important, because we are physically visiting a place, enjoying the place, but without sense of presence, the can can the Oculus, the device can be able to support our sense of presence virtually?
Yeah, sense of presence is one of the most important concepts for how we feel connected in a virtual space, even in Zoom, right? Like if I feel like I'm here with other people and I see other people, that's much different than if it's just a bunch of black boxes, right? So that's the same kind of idea.
Okay, this one is emotional response and representation. So like Professor Alanah, she representing by her avatars, but how emotionally representing really? Okay.
Trust is a part of that too, right? Like that concept of trust. We want to be able to trust is the basis for all of our social interactions. It's necessary for business to take place. We want to have trust with our chatbots, our virtual agents, relationship development trust too. Like if I'm coming to a space and I believe that this other person is who they're saying and what they're saying, then that's going to make a difference in my willingness to continue engaging with that avatar or person behind the avatar. And developers, they want users to keep coming to that world, right? They want users to keep coming back. And so they need to be able to show that they're creating a space where people feel welcome and safe and trusting of that space. So trust is a really important concept to understand in the metaverse too. There have been some cases where people are getting married to other avatars and that they have not met, right? So this is a very interesting concept. People are having full relationships where they totally trust somebody so much so that they would marry them, and they had not met them in real life. So this has been actually happening for at least a decade. Where
real marriage now?
No, they're not they're not really married, but they are married in the metaverse, right? And so I don't know that they would differentiate that in their minds, but legally they are not actually.
Yeah, if that is true, I want to marry another one.
Right. Not me.
Beyond the reality.
People,
actually, human life is a marriage one-to-one. There's a discipline and there's a rule of the human beings. But this metaverse, if provide someone,
it's a free for all. You can do whatever you want in there.
Yeah, there's a desire.
So the question about trust development, how does trust develop in the metaverse? Is it swift trust? How is it developing between individual users or just based on like an organizational representative, like the salesperson that you're dealing with in that metaverse? Do you trust them because they work for that? It's hard to, how would you even say if they work for the company that you're shopping with, or if it's just somebody else that disruptive that has come into that space, right? So it's very unclear how that's going to develop. And anonymity plays a part of it, right? Because avatar manipulation is a piece, but and there is anonymity to some extent. And so, does that develop trust? Does that develop mistrust? I don't know. It's a very important question. Technology development is another category. So already we've grown a lot in the last decade for sure, but there's going to be more developments happening. So photorealistic avatars and spaces, the use of EMG input, so gestures, along with the headset experiences. Gestures is another space that we are seeing some studies take place, holograms, voice interactions, and potential manipulation, so that maybe there will be more use of voice or not, right? One of the studies that I saw on this was specifically related to gestures, right? So these two people were able to do the high five of their avatars when they were actually together, but then also when they were actually dispersed, right? So they could be co-located and still have the gestures working. So this is another kind of cool thing where it doesn't just have to be the headset, but now we're starting to have the gesture experience too. And maybe I'll be able to touch, like feel that I'm touching something, right? So that's another change that could happen. Like I want to touch something in that experience and have a feeling come back to me. So what are the possibilities for that? What areas need increased innovation? Are there standards that we need to be paying attention to? How can these things be working together? All good questions in that space. And I think we just have a couple more. Interoperability, mobility, and scalability, the idea of having these spaces work together, right? We want to be able to have my avatar in the metaverse, and I want it to go to the Microsoft metaverse, right? Like I want to be able to have my avatar teleport from one metaverse to another. Are these metaverse companies going to figure that out so that there's some standards and I can make that happen, right? So if the metaverses are using the same blockchain, then there's the possibility that you would be able to do that. And there's a book that came out about this that talked a little bit about, the siloed metaverses compared to the interoperable potential, right? And if we do come to a space where all of these worlds are going to allow us to kind of move between them as our one avatar, definitely would be beneficial for lots of reasons. And also, so that you don't have to, you're going to be more likely to go to other worlds if you already have an avatar that's in one, right? So that's going to be another value in that too. It's the same as the internet, right? The internet has the standards that allow us to connect all over. And so that desire or interest will be there for the metaverse too.
So like ecosystems, like a Meta, Facebook, they want to build up their own ecosystem for users, everything's providing. But as a users, I want to look around, go around, and I want to get another experience from another world. So in that case, the interoperability potential would be very beneficial to the users.
Yeah, and both the companies too. I think for sure the users, but then, if somebody's in one world, they're going to be more likely to come to another if you lower the barrier to entry. And so ability will help with that. So questions we have there, how can the blockchain allow us to take advantage of an open metaverse? What will the user experience be like in that, right? Like not all of the avatar experiences are the same in all of the different metaverses. They're different. And then also, what does that mean about anonymity, right? If I have the same avatar everywhere that I'm going, but that's not always the case too. Like sometimes people have like a handful of avatars that they sort of cycle through, right? Maybe I'm going to be this one and then this one, depending on what I'm doing. So, but that does make a difference too, I think. So another kind of question. The legal and ethical concerns are also an area of attention. So cyber law, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this space. I think that there are personal, moral, ethics issues that can come up, ethical issues related to businesses, and then even like the technology platform, right? So in terms of misrepresentation or lewd behavior or language expression or addiction in terms of quality of life, right? So those are all personal, moral questions that we would have. Legally, there's taxation, criminal activities, cybersecurity, so lots of legal issues to consider, and other misuse and manipulation of society questions. So this actually was another study that I had worked on with another co-researcher that we had looked at what these specific areas of interest might be. But this is another one, right? This is recent news just last week in the New York Post that a woman said that she was virtually groped in Meta's virtual reality metaverse, right? And there's not really laws governing this space at this time, right? So and it's not even like a real world. So definitely an area for attention. Cool. So questions to ask, how will these activities be tracked and addressed? Will there be virtual governance? We have lots of policies and regulations in other areas. Will that extend to a metaverse? What about identity and anonymity? What about security and privacy? Don't give money to anyone in the virtual world. How are we going to figure that out? And then research ethics is also another question too. So how are we manipulating avatars and participants? Are we doing that in a way that is moral and ethical and following the research guidelines that we need to follow? And then well-being, there are benefits to the metaverse, as we talked about, but there's also concerns, right? Is there too much time in a metaverse? Is that a thing, right? Are the kids playing too long in Fortnite, and are they having too much time in a metaverse, right? So are we becoming overconnected or dependent? Is it unhealthy in some way? So well-being is a question here. The respondents here on this survey, PC World, over 3/4 of respondents believe that the metaverse will cause serious harm to society. So that's a majority perception that would have to be overcome to get people really on board.
So we try to figure out the boundary, the balance, the good things,
Yes.
bad things.
Right. It's, how much time is too much, right? Like how much time in the metaverse versus the real world? What do we know about the metaverse and the brain and the dopamine that is causing you to stay in that space, right? How does that impact your cognitive skills? If you're just having the virtual experience all the time, at the Oculus I mentioned, you know, people get dizzy and headaches from using it for too long. You know, is that going to continue to develop, or are there ways that we're going to be able to figure that out? And digital addiction is a thing too. How do we address digital addiction and pay attention to that? So all kinds of good questions. Another poll here. Which of those top ones are you most, whoops.
Wow. You cover of Metaverse, everything's. You raise issues, research question, opportunity and challenges, and you give a lot of the insightful, you know, lectures to us. It's time to give your question to Professor Alanah Mitchell. Hey, students, it's your time.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
If it's okay. So thank you for the great presentation, by the way. And I thought the concept metaverse is covering the majority of social part and connectivity. So that thinking led me to think, like, does that mean being non-social hinders the getting value or benefits from the metaverse? Like the non-social person can get the benefit same as the social person. And the second question is that if we compare the results measured in the metaverse and in the real life, do we expect different results? Like, let's say we conduct a research on the metaverse, and then we ask the participants to do something, and then if we measure it on the metaverse and also in the real life, do we expect the different results because they have, I don't know, some kind of different persona in there?
Yeah, those are both great questions. For the first one, you know, would a non-social person benefit more from a metaverse experience versus a social person? I think that there's probably some potential there, right? Like I was giving the example earlier, like, you know, maybe you have more questions and you're not comfortable asking those questions, but you might be comfortable in a metaverse where you're not actually you, nobody knows it's you. You can ask the chatbot as many questions as you want, and she's not going to think anything of you because she doesn't actually know it's you, right? So I think that there are some potentials to allow maybe a more non-social person the opportunity to develop their social skills, and then presumably if they become more comfortable as an avatar, then they would be able to take that into their real life. I think that that's certainly a possibility. And then your second question, you know, would the same results happen if you did the same thing in world and out of the world, right? So if I had the same experience in the world and I had that same experience out of the world, would it be the same results for that same participant or for anybody, right? I don't know. I don't know that we've seen a study like that so far, and it would definitely be dependent on, you know, what is the question, what is the task, what is what was it specifically in the real world and how did that specifically compare to outer world? I do think that there's a lot of good questions there, like, would I be likely to go to a Travis Scott concert in person? Probably not, but would I go to one in the virtual world? Maybe for a little bit, right? See what it's like. So I think that that would depend, right? I think that there's possibility that it could be the same, but there's also possibilities that it could be very different. Hard to say. It would depend.
Okay.
I think those are great questions.
Next.
Hi, Professor. I have a question. So I believe Metaverse is something that we can, something that we really have to implement in the real world. However, when I look at Metaverse now, it resembles the dot-com bubble early in the 90s. And this is a very risky phase at Metaverse right now. And how would you look at the Metaverse industry and the visions in the Metaverse comparing to the dot-com bubble situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually think that we're farther than that. I think, in the early 2000s, when I was working on this, originally working on this topic, I definitely think it was like, this could be something or this could not be something, right? But I think where we are now, especially with the Facebook changing to Meta, that's been a big push for everybody. The number of companies that are working in this space has also been a big thing. And NFTs is another big push, right? So there's a lot of cryptocurrency activity happening, which definitely suggests that digital payments are not just a .com example. And furthermore, if we're talking about the .com example, that wasn't like all bad, right? We have definitely gotten there, right? There is a lot of online retail happening. And while that, like some of the early failures from .com, the bubble explosion, like pets.com was one of them, right? Like people were like, oh, I don't want to buy stuff for my pets online. Do you know how many pets.coms there are now? So many. Like all my neighbors have their delivered from online, right? Like nobody's doing that. So I definitely think that we've gotten there now. So do I think like it's a risky gamble? I think it's less risky than you would need to be worried about. I think it's more likely than risky.
Right, and thank you for mentioning about the NFT and the newly embracing technologies these days, which I also have a concern on those technologies, is because NFT, yes, it has the value, but where is the physical goods? How can we discuss on the regulations and terms on the copyrights? How can we resolve those problems in the real world and in the virtual environments?
Yeah, I think that was one of the challenges for sure with Second Life in 2003, right? They had their own currency. They're the only ones doing anything like that. And at that time, it was definitely questionable, like who's governing this, right? Like, how do I make sure I actually get my money in some island in a virtual world, right? But now we are at a place where there is a standard, right? There's a lot more players in the space than there was before. And so I think that we're in a safer place than we were in 2007.
Okay, that's a good question, and that's your big opportunity ahead of you. You can do it by yourself and then inspect what problem there and what concerns there, and that's your job, research.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah,
Professor.
thank you.
Professor?
Yes.
Thank you so much for a wonderful lecture. I'd like to get some of your insight for my point and thought. You said that Metaverse could pave the way for a new kind of economy. I totally agree with that. But I doubt that future tourists will be satisfied with their avatar's experience. And there are many reasons why people travel. And one of them is motivation. They want to meet real people. and experience a real culture in person. So I doubt that this Metaverse can give those kind of experience to tourists. And even if Metaverse could be a tool of pulling the tourists to a destination, it might not satisfy them. And due to the technology, and in addition, the unfairness or inequality might happen between those people who can enjoy the virtual world or technology and those who cannot have the chance to experience the virtual reality because of lack of knowledge or lack of technology. And one more thing is we must consider the people belong to traditional travel and tourism industry because they cannot afford to invest their budget to new technology like a Metaverse because this is a very challenging time. So are there any research or study for how the government or the experts help the local businesses to develop over their capability or to invest those kind of technologies to their businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, I just want to say, you don't have to sell me that travel is valuable. And I certainly don't think that Metaverse travel is going to be the only travel that's taking place, right? And I think it's more of like, there's room for both, and maybe one will persuade you to do the other, right? Like, I think that that's more of the direction that we're going. And then in terms of like research, development, and support, and grants and opportunities for, yes, there's lots there. I don't know that I have a specific citation to provide, but there's lots of groups that are doing that. If you look at any one of those educational tools, like even Spark AR or the Minecraft education, they're always open to education partners so that they can, continue to learn themselves and also persuade people to come into the space. So do I think that there are opportunities that are low cost investments for students and schools to get into the spaces? For sure. I think that that's, yes, I think that that's true.
Professor, actually, I have a question. It might be quite related to the question that Min-jung asked just like previously. So when it comes to like a travel experiences, like the senses are great. It's very important. Like what you feel and like what you eat, what you smell, all those kind of senses are quite important in tourism like experiences. And also I read a couple of previous research on VR. And that also they mentioned that stimulating the senses can enhance the sense of presence. And also it can provide better experience to the users or customers. So that for the Metaverse, like big differences between VR is that the avatar, which is a third like creature, is experiencing like those virtual work. So that it might be a little bit more difficult to simulate those senses when they are experiencing the Metaverse. So for me, I think this is a big challenge and limitations when we are developing Metaverse contents or like a products. So how can we overcome these issues when in a travel, in a tourism context?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, the sounds is still one of the senses that you can help with, right? So sights and sound, you still have those two going for you. I do think that there is some research happening with the gestures, and so maybe there will be some kind of like touch reflex that you could have too. And I have also seen some smell studies where there are scents being let out too. In fact, there's an American clothing store, I think I want to say Abercrombie and Fitch maybe. And if you use their app on the phone, then when you go into the app to buy clothes, they actually start playing the music that they would play in the store. So you feel like if you went into the store, you would hear that music. And now if you're shopping on your phone on the app, you hear the same music. So they're trying to like extend that physical experience through the sound. So I think that that's maybe one other way. And even if I think about that Dubai video, at some point it goes out into the beach and the water, and then you hear the water crashing. Like you don't have this the spray of the water is not getting on you, but you do have the sounds. So maybe that's another sense that you can take advantage of at this point. And do I think that we will get to a place where smell and touch come into play? Yes, I do. We're not there right now, but yeah, I think that that's a great question, and definitely a limitation to how you could have persuade somebody to travel that way.
There's a limitation of the metaverse, like senses. We only can be able to listen and see and touch. There's no such a smells and and tongue.
Yeah, that's what you wanted at the Walmart example, is taste.
Yes.
So her question let me think, like, when we create the metaverse, regarding the tourism, do you think the only governmental level is allowed to create the metaverse regarding the tourism? Because there's some possibilities. Some people create somewhat personal things, like when foreigners come to Korea, and then on the metaverse, when people experience Korean metaverse, and then they think that's the Korea, but actually that's the personal level of the Korea. So do we need to standardize the level of creating the metaverse regarding the tourism?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know. I don't expect that we would ever be at a place where there's like specific governance of like what your space can be like, right? Like, even if you were to say, like, I mean, I could have a Korean restaurant in my space, right? Like, and so I'm still able to give that experience. Like, I don't think that we'll ever be a place where there's like restrictions on what you can have in your world or on your land in the metaverse. So no, I don't think that will happen, but I do think you're right? Like, anybody could have any experience anywhere, and it wouldn't be necessarily like the one that somebody wanted them to have, right?
Yeah, it's because like I thought there's possibility that misunderstanding the culture or the country. So yeah,
for sure. I totally see what you're saying. Yes, I agree. But do I think that there will be a way to restrict that? I just can't envision that being the case. Just like on the internet, right? There's no restriction of what's on one website versus another.
Okay, one last question from one student, and then we're going to wrap up our research seminar.
Professor, I have a question. And I think the metaverse and virtual space has become more popular and get more interest because we cannot meet each other face to face in real, and many restriction has occurred by COVID-19 situation. But I think people will want to go and meet in person in real after COVID-19. So if people meet in real, I guess that socializing or the virtual meeting, one of the big role in the metaverse, will be decreased than now. So at that time, how do you think about the metaverse lore will be changed after COVID-19 or same as now?
Yeah, I think that they're different, right? Like, I think that people desire to be in a space with other people, just like they were pre-COVID-19. I think that is certainly true. But I think that people are also more comfortable with collaboration technologies now than ever. I think that there is a growing development of skills and comfortability that wasn't there before. And so I think that we will continue to see people growing in their interest in the metaverse, especially as we talked about, the younger kids playing all their game time with avatars, and that sort of being a thing that they're comfortable with, and they're coming up and they're going to expect and be comfortable with that too. So do I think that the growing interest will be there? Yes. But do I, at the same time, it's true that people desire face-to-face interaction.
Okay, well, students and Dr. Alanah Mitchell, Professor Mitchell, can you can you speak up your concluding remark about this seminar and to our students?
Yeah, so my concluding comment is that, let's not forget about reality. So yes, the metaverse is great, and there's lots of opportunities, but there's also lots of challenges, and you know, there's the real world too. So both of them have value.
Anyway, have you ever give your lecturing to outside of the United States like this?
Have I have never given a talk in Korea. No.
No, it's your first time.
Yes.
Yeah, so did we give a good impression to you about
you
Korea?
guys were amazing. I really enjoyed spending my time with you.
Okay, I'm so pleasure to invite her, and we listened very great lecture from her about overall metaverse, and she gave us a very good, you know, cover to cover metaverse and the research topic and issue. So it's a great time to you to know, you know, each other and metaverse, you know, research topics. I'm highly and deeply appreciate Dr. Alanah Mitchell and Professor Mitchell, and look forward to see you in real world, not the Zoom world anymore.
Yes.
Okay. Hope to look forward to see you soon in the conference.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great to see you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.